What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is a long time coming. This video is the first one I've made, and let me just find out how long. So yeah, this is the first video I've done in 9 months. As you can see by my surroundings, I've moved flat. Me and my girlfriend moved in together. Got a new setup here. We've got stuff next to me, stuff behind me. It's gonna get all looking nice and fancy and just better in the near future. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm committed to coming back to YouTube and making more content. Whether it's wrestling, music, movies, there will probably be a few channels of me spouting nonsense for you guys to keep up with. But I'm coming back for something that I wanna talk about, obviously, because I'm fucking making this video. It's not the most fun topic of conversation, but recently I saw on Twitter last night a tweet from Seahawk mentioning someone coming back doing a 3-part podcast to sort of, I guess, break down and discuss and disprove all of their speaking out allegations from a couple years ago, and that person was David Starr. Now, the mustache is not a tribute to David Starr, but before we get into the whole stuff, I want to just be totally transparent. If you know me and you spoke to me anytime from the middle of 2017 right up until COVID took out wrestling for a while in 2020. In fact, right up until speaking out, because there was still some, I know Wrestle Talk put on a no fans show to sort of supplement the income for people who lost bookings, because I was on a flight to Dublin for Scrapper Mania, where the main event was going to be John Moxley and David Starr. And I got on my flight, landed back in Ireland, opened my phone, and the show had been cancelled because this new big scary thing called the coronavirus was fucking everywhere. I was really, really upset because, like I said, David Starr was, my favourite wrestler in the world. He was making a case to get on my Mount Rushmore. Him and, a few other people, especially on that sort of UK and Irish indie scene, 2018, 2019, those were guys I was so attached to. And a lot of these guys did end up being pieces of shit. But I want to just get out of the way and just be totally transparent that when I talk about the love I had for Max Barsky and David Starr, I want to start this video off by letting you know every feeling of happiness he ever brought me has been tainted. Every single moment I shared with that man at a show, on Twitter, interactions we shared, which were all positive. He put on this facade of a fucking lovely guy. He was nothing but nice to me every single time I met him. He remembered my name. He called me Jake. Only 2 wrestlers have done that, man. Only 2 wrestlers who I've met multiple times have done that. It's fucking Dunk Mark Davis, who is still my favourite in the world, and this motherfucker. So I want you to know that when I go on to talk about what I'm going to talk about, it is not me coming from a position of someone who is still deep down a fan of David Starr. I fucking hate him. I hate him. He is scum, and I want him nowhere near wrestling. And the fact that someone decided to, I don't know if it was him, if he's a guest on this podcast, or I don't know if he has had an ego trip so bad he's decided to bring this podcast out to disprove his fucking allegations when there's multiple of them, all fucking telling the exact same story. Whoever did that, whoever greenlit that idea, fuck you, fuck him, fuck everyone who still says, oh, give him another chance. Because I've seen yous, fuck all of yous. Now that we've got that out of the way, when he came back into the public consciousness of wrestling, I guess, when he came back, it got me thinking, why did we give up on unionising wrestling? Why did we as a fan base and wrestlers give up on this? In fact, 1 minute, I'm just gonna shut the blinds. 1 second. That's better. You can see me better, I can see the phone better. But yeah, why did we just... I'm going to take my glasses off now because the glare is quite bad. But anyway, now hopefully we're done with distractions unless the cat walks in. Why did we give up? Why did we as wrestling fans stop calling for these companies to have better standards, to hold themselves accountable for the shortcomings, to do all these things that was promised? Just because David Starr is a piece of shit doesn't mean what he stood for in relation to the unionization is a lost cause. Just because he was scum doesn't mean that had to die with him. I understand why people like James Musselwhite, and I understand why people like Suge sort of distance themselves, especially from the whole We the Independent thing. Even though that was never his, that was Musselwhite's. But he became the figurehead for it. I totally understand that. When I threw out all my wrestling shirts of people who had, we had discovered these things about, I didn't throw out my We the Independent one. And a We the Independent Now we play Michael Oku OJMO one. And I kept that because at my core, I believe that. I believe in the unionization of wrestling. I think we all should. Remember, if you were around back then, if you were sort of integrated in Brit Wrestling and the Irish pro wrestling scene, 2018, 2019, you'll remember how big a deal it was when people started getting linked up with Equity. Equity is a performers trade union in the UK, so actors, dancers, like just people in performance in general. There wasn't the means to set up an official professional wrestlers union, so a few people got their equity cards. And it was a fucking massive deal. On the We the Independent podcast, they were talking about all these promotions that signed up to, I think it was the Equity Code of Practice, I think it was called, where these shows promised to have all of the different precautions to help, obviously outside of just the sort of required ones like the paramedics and stuff, providing food for, and not just tea and sandwiches, providing proper filling meals for the talent. And in a lot of these places, apparently, from what I could glean, some of these places were like, hey, no, there's a Subway across the road, because I heard that Big E, is it Big E? It's a lot of Subways for all the protein and all the beef and the meats. Apparently quite a few of these promotions before then used to be like, oh yeah, we'll send someone out and get you some food there. But a lot of these promotions now signed up to take that extra step to ensure there was food for all the talent, with all dietary requirements, which would then help talent tell their friends, if I can go there, they take care of their people. A lot of these promotions signed up to this Equity Code of Practice with things like that, and there was a lot of other things which I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't do a lot of research going into this. I just got really fucking hot and I decided to come on and rant. But that was such a massive step forward. When me as a fan heard about this, it was things that I just took for granted. I was like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't they put fucking meals out for the wrestlers? But apparently that wasn't the case. And a lot of these other things that seem like common sense, they weren't happening, They weren't sort of commonplace. And a lot of people talked about it on the We the Independent podcast, and just in their own time. The Equity getting involved in wrestling helped their lives. It helped their quality of life, it helped their quality of work, and it helped them in their career by giving them more options and making shit better for them. But then Speaking Out came, and all the weird right-wingers were like, as soon as it came out about David Starr, they were like, never trusted him, don't trust a socialist, this is why we shouldn't have a union. No, fuck you. Fuck you if you were one of those people, man. No, get fucked. Because just because he did what he did doesn't mean that the fight for a union is doomed. It shouldn't be. In fact, there's been no talk of anything close to bringing back the unionization conversation in pro wrestling until Freddie Prinze. Freddie Prinze, if you don't know, Freddie Prinze Jr., famous for being Fred in the excellent Scooby-Doo movies, is a massive, massive wrestling fan. He worked with WWE for years and now has a business plan in place to start his own promotion. Fucking Freddie Prinze Pro, we'll call it for the sake of the video. But he spoke about this, and let me get the tweet up so I can read it. So, Freddie Prinze Jr. has plans to start a wrestling promotion, and here's what wrestle purists who sort of spoke about it said this. Plans to start in 18 months, he wants a 2-hour show, has the money for a 3-year plan, storylines based in reality, men and women given equal time, wants to own the space it's filmed in, no TV contract yet, and this is the most important one here, wants it to be a SAG show, a Screen Actors Guild show. And for those who aren't aware, the Screen Actors Guild is essentially the actors union in America. A lot of productions in America will not hire you if you're an actor unless you're a member of SAG. It's a reason why you don't have actors with the same name. I think you need to be in on your own name. So I think the reason Samuel L. Jackson is Samuel L. Jackson is when he tried to join SAG, there was a Samuel Jackson. Stuff like that. It is the actors' union there. And he even replied, someone replied to that tweet from WrestlePurist saying, my question is, where is he going to find talent with SAG cards? He said, the SAG process, and this is Freddie Prinze replying, the SAG process is a simple one if you know how our union works. No one has to be SAG to be a part of the Fed. The Fed provides the opportunity to become SAG. Each show is allowed vouchers for non-SAG members. The show's promise to the union is said talent will join and pay dues. And that's it. If he wants this show, because that was sort of the talk around about the time with We the Independent, is what can be done in America. And there was sort of troubles and issues with people getting booked with, or people getting their SAG cards. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was something to do with no credits, I think. Maybe. I think it was a big reason Jim Johnson struggled to find work in TV after WWE, because at the end of the show, you don't have a list of credits going up that says, Roman Reigns, Joanna White, Seth Rollins, Kobe Lopez. Like, you don't have that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been one of the issues that unionisation on the other side of the Atlantic fell into the trap of, with the fact that SAG looked to be the most viable option, but it was tricky to get in. I might just be talking my arse, I'm just sort of telling it as I remember it. But that's the only real step forward we've had in the conversation, in the wider conversation, in the wider wrestling world about unionised professional wrestling ever since that day in 2020, around about 2 years ago, when the first domino fell, and then we found out all of our favourite wrestlers were scum. But like I've been reiterating, the second that happened, the second that we found out Max Barsky was a fucking awful piece of shit, we all stopped talking about unionising. And I understand that at the time it was really hot. Unionisation of pro wrestling was inextricably linked with, it was just him. It was seen as his movement, but it wasn't. That movement was ours. As someone who's actively involved in that, and as someone who followed We the Independent, and not just David Starr, as someone who, on my end, was pushing hard as a fan to see these changes come, who was massively interested and massively excited about the prospect of this thing that I love so much, and this thing that I've dedicated so much of my life to, taking steps to protect the talent first and foremost. That was our movement, That was as much my movement as it was every single person that was involved in it. Like, we made it what it was. It was fucking special to be a part of. And in the wrestling community, just stopped talking about it. And like I say, I understand at the time why the conversations around that issue cooled off. I'm not blind to that. I'm not out here being like, oh, why did we stop? Like, I know. I understand why it sort of left the sphere of consciousness within professional wrestling at the time. It was a very hot issue. Speaking out, fucking decimated professional wrestling, especially the indies. And, but that unionisation and We the Independent and everything that was going on around that company, that movement, that organisation, that was so fucking special. I will never forget that period of time. I'm so grateful to have been a fan of independent professional wrestling, and specifically the scenes that I was a part of, Irish first and then sort of Brit Rest as well. Being a part of those scenes whilst We the Independent was fucking booming, coming out from London and sending shockwaves across the world, I was so proud to be a part of that, because even though it was a wrestler-led movement, it was about all of us, and everyone who was actively supporting that scene would tell you the same. That was as much mine as it is anyone else's. And the fact that we have just let it go to shit since then really fucking upsets me. And this isn't something I've thought about recently. It's not something that's been on my mind until that fucking weasel Max Barsky crawled out and decided to make this fucking podcast. Then I started thinking about it. And as you can tell, I'm pretty fucking passionate about it. I was back then, I still am now. This isn't a big question video. I'm not appealing to the masses. I understand that my audience isn't wide enough for me to make any ripples in the professional wrestling world, but I understand that I do have followers. I do have a following of people within wrestling, wrestlers, sort of more influential wrestling fans than myself. I understand that I have this reach. So if you're watching this, why the fuck did we give up? You know? If you're a wrestler watching this, why hasn't there been someone else to carry this weight? Because there fucking should be, man. I guess that's all I've got to say on it.